Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are taking a look at yet another Dinomania figure from my newest lot of Dinomania figures I unboxed. This is the Indominus Rex. This is the version 2 Indominus Rex, actually, as we have looked at a previous version, a smaller version, which was actually painted the same way. So it's really cool that they kind of stick with the theme of this paint scheme with like a light bluish gray sort of, and then a dark black or a dark gray mixed with a darker blue. It just looks really cool the way they painted this, and this is exactly the same way that the previous smaller version was painted, so you can almost take the smaller one, put it here with this bigger one, and sort of make it like it has a baby or a family, which is something that we didn't really get to see from the Indominus in Jurassic World, as it was taken care of pretty quickly, and of course also took care of its sister earlier on in its life, so it hasn't really had a family very long, I guess you could say, so maybe you can create a Dinomania Indominus family. But regardless, I think the figure looks really cool at first glance here. It's another one of those very large, kind of squishy figures, so it always has the same similar, almost a little bit of an exaggerated appearance, but as far as this squishy sort of an Indominus Rex type of a figure goes, I think it's really cool looking. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt, you can see some pretty nice detailing throughout the head sculpt of the Indominus. You can see lots of kind of scales that have been sculpted out, some really nice scales, almost osteoderm-like scales here on the lower jaw. So it does have some pretty decent looking detail here on the head. You can also see kind of like some scoot-like scales that run along the eyebrow area and a little bit under the eye as well. Some decent detail there in the eye socket. You can see the eye is given another one of those plastic glass eye sort of looks, so it looks really cool, has a nice realistic shine to it. You can also see the nostrils sculpted out up here at the top of the snout. The teeth are painted primarily with like an off-white, but you can see some of the like bluish gray has run down onto the teeth. So that is a little bit disheartening. At least on the lower jaw, you don't see it very much. It looks a little better, but even still, the teeth are a little bit sloppily painted. One thing that maybe Dinomania could improve on in the future is just the painting of their teeth, because sometimes they do tend to look a bit sloppy, but at the same time, these aren't exactly the most high-quality, scientifically accurate dinosaur models. They're just really cool, super large dinosaur toys, so you can't always overlook things like that. Inside the mouth, you can see that the tongue and the inside of the mouth in general is quite decently sculpted. There's not too much detail to be found in there, but what is found in there looks pretty darn nice. You can see the tongue is actually sticking up here a little bit, so you can pull the tongue up off from the bottom of the mouth. It's also painted with like a maroonish type color, which I think looks fairly realistic and has a really nice gloss coat to it, so it shines fairly realistically as well. You can also see the skin flap here of the inside of the mouth, which, just like the last Indominus, is painted the same coloration here as the rest of the head of the Indominus. Turn to the top of the head, we can see those scoots, those almost ridge-like scoots that run down the middle of the Indominus's head, and then you can also see those kind of crests that the Indominus has above the eyes. And then once we get to the neck, you can continue to see those kind of ridges run all over the place here. As we move down the neck of the Indominus, you've got some really nice detailing, lots of kind of cracks and crevices on the neck of the Indominus, a few skin folds here on the lower part, and once again you can see that the throat is given, actually this one's more of like a reddish color as opposed to the brown that we had seen previously, so it's kind of cool. It's actually more like this one's maybe an adult and has like the red now in the throat, maybe to show sexual maturity. In the previous version had like a brownish coloration because it was younger. I guess you could technically consider that. The way that we are moving forward with these Indominus figures, this one's very large, so I have to continuously move the limbs and everything just to get it into frame, but you can see that those ridges continue to run down the back of the Indominus, and you can also see some nice sculpt work, nice detailing, some fairly nice looking scales, and some cracks and crevices throughout the stomach region of our Indominus. You can see a seam here in the neck, and you'll probably notice I don't really mention the seams on the figures too much or really bring them up, because with these large squishy figures like this, you almost always have seams like that. No matter what company makes them, it's just kind of an inevitability when it comes to these style of figures, so it's not something that I feel like I have to continuously mention because it's just sort of to be expected. You can come down here into the arm. The arm is articulated, so of course you are going to have a seam for the arm, but you can see again some nice muscle tone being sculpted out there in the arm. You also have sort of some ridges sticking off the back of the arm. And then as we move down into the hands, There are those very creepy looking Indominus hands that we know and love. Pretty nice sculpt work, honestly. You can actually see like the structure of the fingers coming out of the hand, so it looks really eerie the way that they've done this, and they've kind of given it just like a blast of black paint over top of the nails to sort of insinuate like paint on the nails, and I think it looks fairly nice as well. You have some skin folding going on here in the stomach region, some nice detail on the underside, lots of cracks and crevices as we run down, kind of creases in the skin as we run down the stomach region of the Indominus. Once again, we have articulation in the legs, and you can see some more decent scaling, also some muscle tone. You also have some scoots that run up the front of the leg here, and then as we move down into the foot sculpt also looks really quite nice. Very Indominus-like for the most part. We do have the dew claws present, and you can see that the nails have been given a quick kind of a spray with some black paint again to insinuate that nail paint. And then we come back up into the tail, and you can continue to see some creasing and everything here on the underside, and some more nice scales up here, along with those ridges that run along the tail, and then they sort of taper off here. If we can get the tail out here, it's a pretty long tail, honestly. Tapers off here at the end, and basically looks like a pretty decent tail here for the Indominus Rex. Looking at the opposing side, you're really probably not going to see too much different, especially with this figure, because this is another of the articulated figures from the Dinomania line, where they just kind of come in a very neutral position, so it's really then up to you how you want to pose your Indominus or display your Indominus, but you can see that it does look really cool here on this side as well. Pretty much again, just like it did on the previous side. Looks very nice, very large, sort of in the way of the camera because it takes up so much room here on the review station. You can get a nice look here at this side of the foot, and you can also see that there's actually some cracks and crevices within the nails there on the feet. We couldn't see that too well on the previous side because it was a little dark in the spot where the foot was, but this side you could definitely see that a bit better. And then we come back up into the tail. Again, there's another one of those seams, like I said, I wasn't going to mention, but it's just kind of an inevitability with these figures. Once again, I did want to state that. Pretty nice looking, honestly. Nice long tail for the Indominus, nice ridges that run along the back, and overall, a really fun-looking Indominus figure from Dinomania. I actually kind of like displaying the Indominus here like this on sort of all fours. It's kind of looking like it's just kind of about to run in and sort of grab something as it has its hands kind of opened like that. I think that's a really cool way to display this, so if I ever actually have the opportunity to display all of my figures, I think this is exactly how I would display this Indominus. But again, for a figure this large, he's going to kind of be a pain in the butt to measure. So for a size, we're going to put the tape measure away out there at the tail and then go to the head. You were looking at about 28 inches or 71, maybe 71.5 centimeters. So that is extremely, extremely long. Now, the height is really going to be dependent on how you want to pose your Indominus, because with this one I have him down on all fours, but if he was standing up on 2 feet, he would clearly be really, really tall. But for a height on this positioning, you're looking at about 7 3/4 inches or about almost 20 centimeters to the top of one of those ridges. But if we stood him up and, well, I guess her, if we stood her up, there would be a very big difference between the size of the height right here and then, of course, the height once it's standing up. You can see once I actually stand the Indominus up, it disappears completely from frame, so it's a very, very large difference for sure. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Dilophosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our exceptionally large Indominus Rex here, and you should easily have an idea of how big this figure is. As per usual with the Dinomania line, you always have extremely large figures, and this Indominus is absolutely no different, and in fact is probably one of the biggest theropod figures that I've had so far from the Dinomania line, except for that Spinosaurus, which is just ridiculously huge. But you could definitely get a pretty good idea here of the size of this figure next to these three, I would imagine. And then to show you the two Indominus figures from Dinomania here together, you can definitely see that they look quite cool together. Really do look like a family, honestly, and I do love having both of them next to each other here. I think the smaller version is a bit darker, actually, than the larger version again as well, so it sort of has like a difference as far as the coloration between the two. maybe dependent on the juvenile towards the adult. So this Dinomania Indominus Rex, the larger version, is definitely a really cool figure, and it's nice to have another version of the Indominus from the Dinomania line, especially with these large squishy figures. There aren't too many Indominus figures out there with this style, so it's cool to have a couple of options from the Dinomania line. Overall, I think the figure is definitely quite nice. It looks pretty close to the Indominus, not exactly of course, but it's definitely, I would imagine, close enough to what you would need for this style of a figure. I think the sculpt work on it is decent. It's nothing to write home about, but it's definitely pretty well done for the most part. I do like the fact that they kind of have the tongue sticking up in the mouth there a little bit. It looks pretty cool overall as far as the head sculpt goes, and definitely makes it look a little bit flashier than had the tongue been kind of just laying on the bottom of the mouth, especially with the mouth wide open in sort of like a roaring fashion like you can see there. It would make sense for that tongue to be doing something, so that was a really nice touch as far as that goes. It's also really cool to have some nice articulation with the figure, allowing you to have the options of how you pose it, and again, like I said, I like to have it on all fours, but you may be different. Maybe you'll like to have it in a bipedal position, so it's really up to you, and luckily Dinomania has given you the option of deciding which way you would like to pose your Indominus. I also really like the fact that they have those sort of glass plastic eyes to the figure, because that's always something that I think adds an extra level of realism to any figure when they can actually apply that sort of plastic glass eye look, so it's also really cool to have that on the figure as well. I do also really like the paint job. I think the paint job is quite nicely done overall. It's nothing crazy or amazing, but it's different from the Indominus, so it's nice to have something different, something unique when it comes to this figure. They've just kind of given their own take on what an Indominus Rex could look like, with this really cool like grayish blue and then this very dark black and blue sort of mixture of coloration throughout the body, just kind of blends back and forth and transitions back and forth throughout the body in certain areas, and I think it looks really nice for the most part. It's quite naturally applied as well, so a very, very cool, very unique looking Indominus Rex here from the Dinomania line, and I definitely recommend it for sure. So if you would like to pick this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do just that on the Dinomania store, so make sure you head down to the description after the video is over, head over to the Dinomania store and pick yourself up a really cool Indominus Rex figure, and also make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.